Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. 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 How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שברחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב
because not so that you can hear, but so that those on the live stream can hear. So, including when we ask questions, we'll pass the microphone around and ask you to use the microphone. I am thrilled that we are having this conversation this evening. And thank you to everyone who's enabling this to happen, to Stephanie, to Sean, and most importantly to Hagar right here next to me. I have been involved with New Israel Fund for probably 25 years or more. I was introduced first to New Israel Fund by my mentor, Rabbi Rick Jacobs. And ever since, my connection with New Israel Fund has been an important aspect of what it means to me to be a Zionist. Because New Israel Fund works to create the Israel that I think we all in this room envision. An Israel that fulfills the promises of its Declaration of Independence, an Israel that has a strong civil society, a democratic and pluralistic Israel. It's an uphill battle, no question, in so many ways. We'll get into some of that. But I love that New Israel Fund works to strengthen democracy, to protect civil rights, and to advance Jewish and Arab partnership, among many other areas in which New Israel Fund works. And these past several years have been especially complex for all of us and for New Israel Fund. And to me, remaining engaged with the New Israel Fund is a way to continue to push, sometimes it feels upstream against the current, toward the Israel that we all want to see. And so I'm very glad we're here tonight with Hagar Iron of the Tzedek Centers. As many of you know who are familiar with New Israel Fund, New Israel Fund doesn't run its own programs. It funds and seeds and nurtures many organizations on the ground in Israel, one of which is the Tzedek Centers. Tzedek Centers is working at the grassroots level on exactly the kind of democratic and civic engagement that is central to New Israel Fund's mission and the future we're all trying to help build in Israel. It's a national grassroots movement that advances democracy, equality, and justice across all of Israeli society through grassroots fieldwork, community organizing, and the development of local leadership. It operates in 24 centers across diverse cities and towns in Israel, and the centers serve as vital hubs for thousands of activists and have engaged more than 300,000 citizens through their training programs, community initiatives, and many other citizen-led campaigns. Hagar is the Partnerships Director at Tzedek Centers after leading the organization's Resource Development Department for 2 years. Hagar is now based in New York for a period of time for 3 years, where I just learned that her husband is a shaliach, a representative and educator at Central Synagogue, my alma mater, as well as Park Avenue and the 92nd Street Y. Thank you. And she brings extensive experience in education and social change organizations in Israel, including serving as a former member of the Regional Council in Emek Hefer. And she holds a BA in Sociology and an MA in Asian Studies from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And so, please help me welcome to Temple Israel, Hagar Iron.
Thank you. Hi. Okay, I'm going to try and be with the mic, and if I drop it or forget about it, please remind me. I'm not used to talking to a mic, and I feel like this should be a conversation. I mean, we should take advantage of the fact that we are a smaller group, and that's perfectly fine, but please feel free to ask questions, just engage and just have this kind of more of a conversation. And thank you very much to Rabbi Friedman for introducing and for hosting and inviting us. As mentioned, and I feel like you gave such an amazing background that I can just dive straight in, but I'll just say a few words about myself. So I came to New York just in August with my family because of my job's position. Before coming here, we lived in a kibbutz in Israel, relatively in the center of Israel, near Netanya, if that if you know where Emek Hefer is, where I served as a council member, and that kind of relates to the work of Tzedek Centers and how I was engaged with Tzedek Centers to begin with. I have two kids, 5 and 8 years old. And before engaging with Tzedek Centers, I've been active in different civil organizations, NGOs, and education platforms in Israel. Also taught Hebrew for several years, both inside and outside of Israel. And I'm here today to talk about the work of Tzedek Centers, but also acknowledging NIF support. NIF, I'm sure you're familiar with, but they are one of the funders that fund our organizations in Israel. So thank you if anyone is watching. So I'll say a few words about Tzedek Centers. So, amazing. So basically, as Rabbi Friedman mentioned, Tzedek Centers is a grassroots organization. Our focus in promoting democracy and democratic values across Israel is our focus on our work in the municipal level. If any of you are familiar with theories of community organizing, we draw a lot of inspiration from community organizing in the States, where it was developed and kind of pioneered. And we currently work in 24 cities across Israel. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Our goal is basically to promote civic engagement at the local level as a way to get people more engaged, to participate more in democracy, and also to promote democratic values and ideas in cities all across Israel. One of the unique aspects of Tzedek Centers is that we are very widespread across Israel. So the 24 cities that we work in, kind of represented here on the map, you can see that we are spread both in the center of Israel and in the periphery, from our southernmost center that is in Beersheba in the south, to the north to Kiryat Shmona and Katzrin, and many, many cities in between. We aim to be present in every sector of Israeli society, or almost every sector. A lot of the cities that we work in, or the first cities that we worked in, were very mainstream Israeli cities, kind of like, I don't have the exact translation of it to English, but it's like middle to upper middle class cities. In Israel, we have this kind of like a decimal system, from like 1 being the poorer cities, like they have this rating. So we call them the tier 7 cities. That's like kind of like not ultra liberal or ultra progressive cities, but just like very mainstream Israeli cities like Rosh Hashanah, Rehovot, Modi'in, Rishon LeZion, if these mean anything to you. At 2021, we kind of, after, and again, I'm not going to go into a whole history of Israel, but in May 2021, we had major riots in May between Jews and Arab citizens of Israel, especially in mixed cities. That was called Shomrei Chomot, and that pushed us to start working also in mixed cities. We opened our first mixed city center in Ramle, also relatively in the middle of Israel, and afterwards in Akko and in Haifa, where we work in a joint model where we have both a Jewish and an Arab leader, and I'll talk more about the model of Tzedek Centers in a minute. Since then, we also have begun working with new immigrants, especially from Russia and Ukraine. Those are not the immigrants that maybe you're familiar with if you know a little bit about Israel. We had a huge wave of immigration from those countries in the 90s, but we're talking about new immigrants that came especially since 2014, at the beginning where Russia invaded Crimea, how do you say it? Crimea, sorry. And then even more waves of immigration came after the war in Ukraine, both from Ukraine, but mostly from Russia. So that's one demographic that we work with as well. And also we have centers in Arab towns, 4 of them at the moment, and opening a 5th one soon in Tamra, in Majd al-Krum, Nazareth, and in Tamra, Majd al-Krum, Nazareth, and Jaljulia. At those, we operate together with a sister movement or a sister organization called the Jial. who is an Arab movement, and we work with them when we work in Arab or in mixed spaces. Yes, of course.
Here in the United States, we hear and speak a lot about politics on the national level in Israel, but it bears repeating, and this might be familiar to many, but it bears repeating that Israel works very differently from the United States. So the first thing that I would point out is that there is no local representation to the national level in Israel. So a member of Knesset, their only commitment is to their party or the coalition, not to a particular town, city, zip code, region, et cetera, et cetera. They don't represent actual human beings in an actual place. Fair to say?
Yes, I have a lot to say.
Okay, so you could share your please you should absolutely it's in the comparison is that our representative Jim Himes, there is a border and he represents all of the 500,000 roughly people who live in that border, or our two senators represent all the people who live within the state of Connecticut. It doesn't work that way in Israel. That's number one. Number two, in the States, there are multiple levels of government, less so in Connecticut because we have no county government at all, but there is the state level, which is in between the federal and the local level. If you live in New York, there is an entire county government as well. So then you have a federal, state, county, and then the local level. In Israel, it's national and it's municipal. That's it. There's no other levels in between.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So all of that is to say that the potential of the impact of Tzedek Centers is huge because of the system in which it operates.
Yes. No, thank you. It's important. If I say anything that is not clear, please feel free to jump in or feel free to ask. I do want to kind of, before we dive into it, just kind of give you a picture, because I'm talking about centers and I'm describing the cities in which we work, but what does that actually mean? So I just kind of like to give you more of like a concrete way of imagining what I'm talking about. So I want to explain what is the model of a Tzedek Center. So in each city in which we work, we first of all have a full-time manager, or two if it's a mixed cities, and we have also other models that have two managers, but let's say one full-time manager. This is not a voluntary position. The idea is that to create real civic engagement that has longevity, that has power, we need to have a person whose sole purpose and full-time job is to cultivate that. So we have one full-time manager or two in each of these cities. We have a structure. We have a physical place where people can meet and organize and work together. That is not a small thing. Not many NGOs have such infrastructure that they have an actual physical presence, both of a person and of a place, in cities that are outside of Israel. I know we just talked about, how slim, thin the government in Israel is. It's such a tiny country, but still, you would be surprised that not surprised, I don't know, that a lot of the civic organization and a lot of the civic activity in Israel is very concentrated, mostly in Tel Aviv. Jerusalem would be the second, and Haifa maybe. And that's about it. Like, the minute that you step out of these three big cities, you have very little presence of civic society organizations, and especially of those that are on the more liberal or democratic side of the map. Before, and this is the kind of not going in deep into that, but before that, there was more presence, especially of some of the parties in those cities, but that completely vanished in the last 20 to 30 years. And they're very much dominated by maybe sometimes religious organizations or or they don't have anything really. They can travel to Tel Aviv, and I know in American perspective that's not very far, but a lot of them, they don't really have avenues in which to be active basically in their own city. So that's two things. And what we do there. So the main kind of like pump of life of a Tzedek Center is our training courses. We have them 2 to 3 times a year. We always laugh that like we have 3 in a normal year, but we haven't had the normal one since I don't know how many years. So let's say usually 2 training courses a year. They are 3 months long each session, and the center manager basically, they will always. I did not mention this, but it might be worth mentioning. They're always local to the city in which they live. Like we don't get people to work, to bring whatever. Like a local Tzedek Center will always be a person who lives and is rooted in that city. And through their own connections and engagement, we try to find people who are already well-known, have been active in their city. Finding a right center manager is really what everything else hinges on. But once we have that person, they do training courses. And in those training courses, we introduce to people that choose to participate in those. That would be like a cohort of like 20 or 25 people that come once a week in the evening out of their own free time to learn both about, we start usually with like core concept and ideas and kind of like understanding of basic theories of change. And then we focus on the municipality, or basically on the city in which you live. So we learn the structure of the municipality. What are the different committees that are working? How, if you have an issue in any of those subjects, what are your tools as a citizen, a private person, to engage with the education committee or infrastructure committee? How do you read the budget? When can you read the budget? And when do you have time to say anything about the budget? So these are all topics that we learn during our training courses. And by the end of those 3 months, what happens is that the participants of the groups, they choose topics that they want to work on, or sometimes they already had them when they came in the door in the first place. And they form action groups on those topics. And those can be very diverse topics. I mentioned education, that's always a number one concern for people. Public infrastructure, another one. Transportation in Israel is horrible and is always a matter of concern. But it can be LGBTQ, separation of state, city, and religion, freedom of religion. And it can be small stuff. It can be environmental issues. It can be that there's a vacant lot in my neighborhood and I want it to be something A rather than something B. Maybe sometimes there's already a plan B that I want to oppose, but sometimes it's just I want to, engage. And all those different topics then form into action groups. And those action groups continue operating. Some topics can have very it's like a 2 or 3 months action if it's a very specific one, and sometimes they just keep on going for many years. And it's the role of the Tzedek Center manager to give guidance and tools and to kind of like help those action groups achieve policy change or whatever impact that the citizens want to form. Another aspect of that kind of a center is forming community. It's interesting because when I talk about this here, I always think about that, you kind of sometimes have this built into the American Jewish system, that you have a synagogue, which is a place of worship, but also it's a place of community. And you sometimes have the Jewish day schools that are very strong at building community around them, something I'm learning now. But for most non-religious, and I'm using the word religious in a very Israeli way, not an American way, a secular Israeli, if you don't have a synagogue, you really don't have a community. Like, you don't have anywhere that you can identify with, go to meet people. I mean, you might go to play, participate in any kind of like sport, I don't know, different extracurricular activities, but you don't have a place where you can kind of like connect your identity, your culture, your sense of belonging, and also your values and your activism. So the physical place and the manager also build that. It connects the two aspects of working and being active to make change in your own city with, lectures and holidays and Kabbalot Shabbat and celebrating stuff together and learning together. And the two nurture each other. So you have a community that's built around activism, and you have activism that has community aspect. And really the third part of the Tzedek Center in its role in a city is to nurture and foster leadership. We want, ideally, not all people that are engaged in a Tzedek Center, but some people go through that funnel. And we want to encourage them to take position of influence and leadership in their own communities. So it can be as simple as joining kind of like neighborhood committees. Sometimes, we have like building committees, neighborhood committees, school PAs, and also to run for local government. And as Rabbi Friedman mentioned, we only have those two levels of government in Israel. So there's the national level. That gets a lot of attention, of course, and it can be very divisive. We focus on the municipal level as a place where we can both be more, I will say, there's a lot of place where you can affect change in the municipal level. Things that are very, very, that have a very strong influence on your day-to-day life are actually determined by the municipality. Municipalities have a lot of power in Israel. That power is constantly growing because of different trends of privatization in Israel, and the state is becoming less involved in a lot of decision-making on the ground. So a lot of decisions in many areas that I mentioned before, even public transportation on Shabbat, which is like used to be a huge issue in Israel. We don't have public transportation on Shabbat, but you see more and more cities operate their own city, kind of like half private modes of transportation on Shabbat. That's like one example, but there's many, many more that we can go into later. So the municipal level has a lot of influence on your day-to-day life. It's much easier to change like when you organize within your city. It's much easier to affect change because even though you may not like your influence over your municipal council members, it can be very direct. You usually know who they are, you know where they live, you go to school with their kids, and they are much more committed, as you said before, to your well-being because they face the same realities that you do. So that's one bonus or like advantage to focusing on a municipal level. You can have a lot of impact there. And second, because of it being less binary and divisive than the national politics, you can have a lot of different collaborations and connections that are not possible today in the Israeli national politics. You see that when you talk about promoting equality and democracy and just better and accountability in the city, most people agree. And you would think that they would also agree on the national level, but those are words that have become not as not a consensus anymore in Israeli politics. So that's kind of like a basic of what a Tzedek Centers is. One more thing I will say before I will give you time to ask questions, just so you have I'm gonna kind of skip that, but so just to give you just an example, because it might sound vague, the topics that I talk about are very kind of like different. So just to give you a few of our cross-cutting themes that we have in most of our centers that kind of tell you, because we want citizens to choose their own action groups, their own topics, but we, when they come to work and to participate and to be active in a Tzedek Center, but we do have a few core values and ideas that are represented in our ecosystem department. So one of them is promoting shared society. We do it both in mixed cities, obviously, that's where it's most prominent, but also in mixed regions. So you would have also centers from neighboring, predominantly Jewish and Arab towns, meeting together, for instance, Nahariya and Tamra and Majid al-Krum, Ramle and Rishon LeZion and Rehovot. So we promote and we also support local initiatives in other places that promote a shared society. Again, when I talk about shared society, and I'm talking about within citizens of Israel that are Palestinian or Arab citizens of Israel and Jewish Israelis. Another topic is the local education guard groups. It's a bit of a complex topic, but I will just basically say that these are local organized parent groups that work together to kind of protect democratic values and ideas and pluralistic values and ideas within the education system. And because there is a lot of influence from more extreme parts of the Israel politics that kind of try to promote those values. A 50-50 is an initiative that was formed outside of Tzedek Centers and is kind of moved into the Tzedek Centers that promotes gender equality in every decision-making platform, especially in politics, but not only. Living in Dignity is a very interesting network of people living in poverty that we engage and give tools to talk to both media and stakeholders and in the Knesset to promote the voices of people who have actually experienced poverty and bring their point of view to stakeholders' decision-making, environment and climate, and Russian-speaking communities, which I have mentioned before. And the last thing, and I promised after that I will let you ask questions. I know it's a lot, but I mentioned before that in the funnel of like creating leadership in a city. So our flagship program is called Local Voice, in which we train activists that are interested in that and have the disposition to run for local government. It started when the organization was very, very young in the 2018 elections. We didn't really have anything organized. By 2024, we were more organized. We had trained by those elections, I'm talking about the municipal elections, not the national elections, 120 candidates that ran in various cities across Israel. 102 of them were elected. And since then, we've been training more sitting council members in Israel. It's even though it's such an important position, it's a voluntary position. So usually people do it in the little free time that they have after doing a full-time job, and they get very little training. So we want to give them the tools to kind of cut down the learning process. So the minute they enter, they know what they need to do to promote equality and the different topics that we spoke about. And we are currently training more council members. The next municipal elections are in 2028. That's when the next year we'll start training more candidates for those elections. And we do that in different tracks. I will say that out of the more than 400 officials that we have trained, 120 are from Arab municipalities. We have a specific track for Arab-speaking council members. And I think I will stop here. I know I said a lot, and I will...
Instead of me asking questions, I want to invite anyone here to ask questions. Who would like to start, Cheryl? Just please use the microphone just so that those on live stream can hear us. We can hear you fine in the room, but...
I think one of the reasons you're here is because Rabbi Friedman has been an advocate of NIF for years. That's how I first heard of it. And do you have analogous people in France, in England, in Mexico, other places where you have Jewish communities that can also learn more about this kind of work that Israel is doing? And an ancillary question to that is, can you develop a better, this is more of a plea, a better PR for Israel, since the forces against us are only getting worse and worse, and we need better voices that are not a lot of what we hear.
So the first question was about communities outside of Israel. So I will say I'm not speaking on behalf of NIF. I'm speaking. I do know that NIF has presence in many cities across the globe, and in many countries, in Australia, in Germany, in the UK, and elsewhere. Funnily enough, that I did not mention this, we actually have 2 Tzedek Centers that are outside of Israel, but that's not exactly what you were asking about, but it's just interesting to mention them as well. We have 2. One, it's very surprising. One is in Rio de Janeiro, and the other one is in Kharkiv in the Ukraine. Long story of why, but it's interesting work, but not what I'm going to talk about. Talking about Israel's PR, that's an interesting question. For the organization, I will say it's interesting because we do such. I was introduced once in a panel somewhere of Tzedek Centers doing hyper local organizing or something like that, hyper local, and I was like, okay, it's a city is not that hyper local. It's it's small, is in Israel, but we are very focused internally on Israel. I mean, I'm speaking to you as partners and as friends of Israel, and very happy to share. And I think a lot of the reason that we come and we talk more about Israel, and here I'm talking myself also. He will allow me to speak on behalf of my husband, Dagan, that he does that a lot. Like, I feel like our role really is really trying to portray a way of being related to Israel or of being Israeli that is trying to make it better, definitely. Like, it's an uphill battle, like Rabbi Friedman mentioned. But we are devoted to that work because we don't really have another option. I don't know if a PR for Israel is what we kind of try to do, but I hope that people learn that there are many organizations that do that kind of work in Israel. There are many people in Israel fighting that battle at the moment, and I wish that kind of like that middle voice that is not negating completely the right of Israel to exist or to have self-determination, but also not just saying yes to whatever is happening, because we are very much trying to change what's happening currently in Israel. That's the voice that I want to just strengthen, and just to make sure that you as friends of Israel know, but maybe other people as well, that that's a group that exists, that that's a strong group that's working very hard at the moment. And we need your support, but also I hope. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just add that so many of Israel's so many of Israel's detractors focus on what comes out of the mouths of the extreme right, or they accuse Israel of being an apartheid state, and I can go on. All of the allegations that are. We need organizations like Tzedek Centers and the many other grantees of NIF, and we need to know about them so that we can say to Israel's detractors, that's not accurate. I mean, sure, Ben-Gvir said such and such. I get it. But what's actually happening in Israel? What's actually going on the ground? So to me, like, this is why we need Tzedek Centers to make Israel the nation that we believe it can be, that we envision it can be, but also to be able to counter the arguments of Israel's detractors. That's what I would say. Okay, Eileen.
So my first question is, talking about the local government. So to what degree is there party politics on the local level? So to what degree is there divisiveness on the local level that in your training, that you're dealing with? So I'm a person that's interested, but I happen to be, Labor Party. And so, how are you training these people to to operate within this party system is my first question. My second question is, you were saying that a lot of the work now, because the national government is being diverted into other areas, a lot of the sort of infrastructure, transportation is coming from the local level. So my question is, to what degree, so then how is environmental policy, how is national transportation policy, I mean, what's happening there? Is that what you're working on the local level sort of percolating up? Or is there some sort of chasm that, okay, so I'm fixing in the Shabbat situation in my local town, but what about the next local town, you know?
Yeah, good question. So I will try to start with the first one. So I will first say, and I have to say this, we don't support any specific people that run for government, neither on the national or on the local level. And in our trainings, we help them get elected, but not as we give them trainings on how to get elected and then trainings on how to run government, but we don't support any specific candidate. And in some cities, we can have different candidates from different parties take part in our trainings, as long as they all sit under the wide umbrella of our values, which is democracy, equality, and what in Hebrew is translated literally to social justice, but I will say it has a little bit tzedek chevrati, so it will be translated to social justice, but in Israel it has a more of like economic justice, kind of like a meaning to it. Then I think the American aspect is a little different. So we can have candidates from different parties sitting in our trainings and then running for government in the same city. Maybe they were not going to be in the same cohort, but we've had that in the past. And usually what you have in the major cities in Israel, so most parties, the big ones, have their own, like there would be a labor local, like let's say we're in Rehovot or in Rehovot. So we have like a local Likud branch that has their own candidates, like city council running for government, and Meretz will have one, and the Labor Zal will have one, and also independent parties. So there can be local parties, and they may be kind of like affiliated or not. You have like the Liberal Rehovot, which is not affiliated with any specific party, but they have liberal values. So we have, that's the kind of like, just to give you the arena. And even though party politics exist in the local level, they're much less strict than they are in the national level. For instance, the local Meretz or liberal branch in Rehovot will sit in the coalition that is under the Likud mayor that was elected. Because again, when you look at the local politics, you have to form a coalition. It's the same kind of system as we have in the national level. It's not like a two-party situation. We have many, many parties, and then you want to form a coalition and you work together. And then Meretz, which, when I say Meretz, does that mean anything to you? It's like the liberal...
The center-left party.
Left.
Well, if you're...
No.
Even if you're yes, small, okay. So yes.
Relative,
if
like...
If there's a left, it's left, okay.
It's the most left that still defined itself as a Zionist. I would say that. Okay. That's how I would define them. Anyway, so they can sit together in the same coalition because they form understandings on how. And the trainings that we give to the people that are in, and still in the municipal level, Likud is still the strongest. Likud is the right, is Bibi Netanyahu's party. They're the stronger also in the municipal level. They have a very strong presence. I was mentioning kind of like before how a lot of the liberal parties have kind of like forsaken their presence in many cities outside of the major cities in Israel. The Likud has not. It is very strong in the periphery of Israel. They have local branches, and then they have local elections, local governance. And we give the people that come to our trainings, well, if it was before the elections, it's mostly about PR and how to get elected, but then afterwards it's about how to form coalitions and what are the specific things that you need to maybe make sure that you get out of your coalition agreement between the different parties, so that you are able to represent the values that you want, even within that party system. And it's a complicated field. And within that, I will say that council members are, I'm not going to say, mayors have a lot of power in that, in the municipal sphere. That's why you need to kind of like empower council members who are volunteers to just like make their lives as easy as possible, so that they can effectively make policy in these areas. I'll give one example. In Jerusalem, we have one of our action groups was formed after one of our activists was chosen, was elected to the city council in Jerusalem, and it was the end of they had to very quickly at the beginning of 2024 approve the budget for 2024. It was after October 20. There was a whole thing, and they got the city budget like 48 hours before they had to vote on it in the council, and it was like, you have to vote on it tonight, otherwise we go into shutdown. And you get it 48 hours before. And I promise you, I was a council member at my own regional council. It's not as big as Jerusalem by any means, and it's still a very thick binder of the municipal budget. And for Jerusalem, which is the biggest city in Israel, I promise you, it's a very complicated budget. So he asked the people at the Tzedek Centers who were involved in him getting elected to begin with to help. They sat there the whole night, divided the city budget between them, went over, highlighted areas of concern or just areas where you had questions. It's not even necessarily to oppose, but just like questions about that. And he was able to come more prepared to the next meeting and ask his questions and raise the positions and be effective. And afterwards, they kind of like formalized this model of work with him and with other council members from the more liberal side of the Jerusalem council. And they sent representatives to sit in every council meeting and in every standing committee, whether it's the education or the allocations committee. And the combined work with having council members, but also a public that is organized and is able to support and kind of like it allows a lot more power to the council members. And the second question was about, sorry, you asked. Oh, so okay, so yes, it depends. So we have what I was talking about, infrastructure and, for instance, transportation. So it can be about local bus routes, for instance. They don't serve a specific neighborhood, or we're talking about infrastructure like allocations of municipal buildings. Where is it allocated? In Israel, most municipal properties and facilities, like 80% of them, are allocated to religious activities, which are important. I'm not saying that they're not, but
80%.
Yes. So again, if that's a topic where we want to intervene and help people get things that are relevant to them. Like for instance, if this is a liberal neighborhood that already has a synagogue and a mikveh and Bet Chabad and whatever, and you want to have a community center or a Tzedek Center or a library or just any sort of like more civic, non-religious activity, then you have to work very hard to get that happen. But I will give you like a small example also of local infrastructure. And it's small examples, but those are examples that give agency and power to people. So for instance, in Arab municipalities, infrastructure, I don't know if you've ever traveled to Israel, and if you have ever been to an Arab, we call them all Arab villages, but they're towns and cities. They have horrible infrastructure, like really horrible. It has many reasons. I'm not going to go into that. But for instance, so in the city of Tamra, an action group of local parents came to the Rada, who is the manager there, and what they wanted to get was that the school was on the main road, like. And again, if you've ever been to an Arab town, you will know that like the road goes like straight into the middle of the town. There's usually no sidewalk, nothing. So the school was on the main road. There was no like kind of like a barrier or like a railing separating the entrance to the school from the road, from the cars. So what they wanted to demand from the municipality was to put some kind of like a railing there or like a protective space. And she was able, Rada, to organize these parents on a very simple letter writing campaign or a WhatsApp, SMS writing campaign to the municipality. She got all of the parents in the school to do that repeatedly, and also to have different groups of people go to the meetings of the local education committee, and demand that they do that, and they were successful. And one of the reasons that they were successful, which again it sounds trivial, I guess, like, but for an Arab municipality, it's not trivial at all, because I will try to say this like more simply, but like she was able to get parents from different families in that town to work together. That's not always common in Arab towns. Usually there are different familiar loyalties that you're either with the mayor or not with the mayor. But because Tzedek Centers is not affiliated with any specific family or with any specific party, it was the demand for this came from across all the families that live in that town, and he couldn't ignore them, and he got them. They're still working on a crosswalk, but we have a barrier there. So that's a small success. Yeah, and in many cities, in many of the cities in which we work, again, these are not necessarily like the main cities in Israel, not like we're not talking about Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, but for instance, in Rehovot a few years ago, the first Pride parade that the city had was formed by an action group that grew in the Tzedek Centers, an LGBTQ group that was there, and they first initiated it themselves, but then got the municipality to approve, support, endorse kind of the Pride Parade that they still have every year in the city. We have a similar battle now in the city of Nahariya in the north, where that is still not happening, but it's in a process. So it's diverse, but it's all under umbrella of improving people's lives and improving public participation and promoting democratic values in the meantime. That's kind of like the arch. I think we have time for one more question.
Since you're working very locally, my question is, how are local schools funded? What's the tax arrangement? We have several layers of government. We pay taxes to all of them. And who actually controls that element? Because in my view, who funds the education helps to determine what the education looks like. So.
And maybe we can tie this to the Shomrei Chinuch. What was it called? The
That's a very okay. I'll try to make it as
I don't remember the exact name, but I was noticing that.
Mishmar HaChinuch HaMamlachti. Yeah. Okay, so we also pay taxes both on a national level and a local tax called Arnona. But eventually, schools are funded by funds that come from the national, national funding goes to all the school. There is an element of a local funding, but it's mostly national funding that goes to a lot of it is everything that I mentioned before, the funding comes from the government to the municipality, and then the municipality has some power in deciding over it. But it is going through the national level and the taxes and then back into the municipalities. For elementary schools, there is much more municipal power. Secondary, like middle and high schools, thank you. That's the hour of the day where my English is starting to kind of deteriorate. So high schools are a little more controlled by the state. For many, many years, we've had governments in Israel where, okay, I will try to make it as simple as possible, but we have several streams of education in Israel. I don't know if you know that. There is the Haredi education system. Some of them are national, but some of them are completely private, and they just learn whatever they want to learn, and they don't learn math, and they don't learn English, and it's a huge thing in itself, but that's not what I'm talking about. And then we have the Chinuch Mamlachti, which is just the national education, also divided into three streams: the Arab stream, the Tzionut Dati stream, like the religious Zionist stream, the religious stream that's not like the ultra-Orthodox, but they're still participant in Israeli society, and then the general stream. That's the Chinuch Mamlachti. Just like general, that's where my kids go to school. A lot of the population does. And mainstream public schools.
Can I just ask, so
Yes.
if I live in a particular community, do I have a choice of
Yes.
those three tracks?
So if you are an Arab person living in an Arab town, you have the Arab education system. They have some autonomy. They learn in Arabic, but they're still very much controlled in the narrative that they teach. I'm putting that one aside. And then if you live in a city, whatever city you live, usually you will probably have the choice of either going to the Mamlachti Dati, like the religious schools, or to Mamlachti Klali, which is like the general mainstream public schools. Where do you want to send your kids? Mamlachti Dati is sponsored 30% more, the religious schools, than the secular or just like the mainstream ones and the Arab ones.
They get 30% more funding.
Yes. Yes.
And that's because of the coalition arrangement at the national level.
Yes. That is current, and has been so for many years. And then Arab is slightly less funded than the general one, but slightly. They're kind of equal compared to the religious, which is 30% for different reasons. They have more funding because they also want to have religious classes, and then they need to separate girls and boys, so they need more classes. Different reasons. They're funded much more heavily. And that is because for many, many years, education, the Ministry of Education was controlled throughout all governments by people who come from the religious sector. And not only do they control their own autonomous education system, but they also control for many, many years now the general one, the mainstream one, which is crazy. And in the last, I don't know how many years, into that has come a lot of privatization, defunding, and then a lot of NGOs and just different bodies can go to schools and offer them programs. And a lot of those programs will come from a very specific side of the political map in Israel, because they are already overfunded, so they can afford to come to a principal of a school and say to him, like, oh, I can give you for free someone who will teach you a class on Moreshet Israel, like just like Judaism. Yeah, Jewish heritage, Judaism, Jewish culture. They have different names for it, but it will always be one kind of a perspective of Judaism. It's always the Orthodox, and it also comes with very nationalist agendas that come with it. So, Mishmarot HaChinuch HaMamlachti is like the guards of the education system are is actually, and I have to say this is a collaboration between Tzedek Centers and another organization, Keren Bell Katzenelson, where they do the national advocacy. And I will mention that in many of the topics that I spoke about, whether it's LGBTQ or climate or religious separation of state, and we work in collaboration with national organizations, usually national organizations that are topic-based, issue-based organizations. They have like advocacy, they have national campaigns, they work with the Knesset. They don't have the physical presence that we have in many cities across Israel, and that's where we collaborate. So we organize local groups of parents to protest. For instance, for if you find out that your school, a real example, like almost for no money at all, you can have like a 3-day school trip, but you have to visit Hebron, for instance. Like you get this as that's like beyond the Green Line. Beyond the Green Line, you have to visit settlements. You have to visit. So as a principal, you might take that program. Oh, it's a 3-day, like, amazing program, and you have to visit beyond the Green Lines. So as a parent, you want to organize, first of all, to be aware of those things, to organize and to protest if you don't want your kids to participate in such programs. And that's kind of like where the local aspect of it meets the national. I hope that answered your question. But that's one of the main things that we... With the younger generation, oh my God, yes.
We just use the microphones as we wrap up. Okay. Yes, so that's fascinating. So they push back against the creeping influence of the Orthodox and national, or like religious nationalism in the public education system.
Yes, and again, this is not anti-religious.
Right, of course.
I do feel like I should say that, even though it may be very clear to everyone sitting here in this room, but like it's about representing diverse options of what it means to be Jewish, religious, and even Zionist. I mean, I am Zionist. I don't want my kids, and I don't myself go beyond the Green Line. I don't want my kids only to learn one version of what it means to be Jewish, and it's only the Orthodox way, and that always demands gender separation. So they take the girls and boys to separate. Those are kind of topics that are national, but also have a very, like, they creep in, like you said, in schools, and that's where local organizing really has effect. I'm optimistic, I will have to say. I feel like I need to say that.
I always say that optimism is not a Jewish value, but hope is the highest of values because it involves action. That we believe that the world, as we see it today, may not be very good, but that with our own strength and our voice and our power, we're talking about organizing, our power, we can make it better. So to me, that is tikva, that is hope. And hearing from you tonight, Hagar, gives us hope for Israel and for the future of Israel. I want to thank all of you for coming to be part of this conversation, and especially, Hagar, we want to thank you for being part of this conversation. To all of you on the live stream, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you in person very soon. Erev Tov.
Thank you. And I will say also, if anyone wants to reach out to continue this conversation, I'm not very far from here. I'm in New York. You can have my email from Rabbi Friedman, and I'm happy to continue the conversation.